Door-to-Door Con is right around the corner with Mastermind Day January 16th in Salt Lake City, Utah with Tim Grover, author of Relentless, and Michael Jordan's coach. You also have Mark Eaton, former NBA All-Star. January 17th and 18th at the Salt Palace in Salt Lake City, Utah, you have Ed Milet, Coach Burt, Tim Grover, and many more famous speakers and workshops on how to improve your leadership, sales, and recruiting. Register today, dddcon.com. For DDDU users, we have a DDDU after party Friday night. Don't miss out. Pre-register at doortodoorcon.com. Hey everybody, this is Sam Taggart with the DDD podcast, and I have 7'4" Mark Eaton on the podcast today. He is a former All-Star and played for the Utah Jazz, my team, with my players, Karl Malone, John Stockton. Who else do you play with? Jeff Hornacek?
Yep.
Who else?
Yeah, Jeff Malone, Thurl Bailey.
Thurl Bailey?
Yep.
Got the hands of a freaking polar bear, like, you know what I mean? It's nuts. So anyway, former NBA All-Star. He also is partners in some really renowned restaurants here in Utah, and he is a national speaker. He speaks for all sorts of people, worldwide speaker. You're going to Acapulco here in a minute. So
yep.
Worldwide speaker, and he is a speaker at Door-to-Door Con coming up in January. So he will be there at the actual mastermind. So what's cool is he's speaking twice, which I think I'm excited about. So he is really trained companies and consulted and spoke on team and creating, teamwork and how to leverage your skill set. And he has a book called The 4 Commitments of a Winning Team. So if you're looking and interested to learn more about Mark Eaton, you can go on Amazon and get this book, 4 Commitments of a Winning Team. He also he's training at the mastermind on how to create better teamwork and coaches, and then he's speaking at the event. So if you're coming Thursday, get your mastermind ticket the 16th. If not, general admission, he'll be speaking from the main stage. So super excited to have you on the podcast and at the event.
Yeah, I'm excited too. It's going to be a fun event.
This will be good. So we're live here at his house in Park City, Utah, which is pretty cool. So I grew up in Park City. So I played football with his son, and I'd see him at the games, and every time, he's sitting on the sideline, you're like, there's Mark Eaton. You know what I mean? Too bad his son was like my height. He's like probably 6 foot? I don't know.
Oh, he's like 6'3".
6'3" now?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Well, it wasn't like he was this tall dude. He was
more the football body, that's for sure.
Yep. Big dude, played lineman, solid cat.
Yeah.
But super excited to learn today. We're going to be diving in on, what makes a winning team, what made you great. I think one of your story is actually really unique in most regards of an NBA player. Most people, they are really good, and then they get really good, and they play in the NBA, and that was not the case with you, right?
No, not at all.
So let's talk about that. So high school, you're 6'11", you're playing in high school, but not really playing. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I didn't play much in high school. I grew up in Southern California, and I was growing pretty quickly back then, and pretty uncoordinated, didn't know what to do with myself. I don't think the high school coach knew what to do with me either, and I just sat on the end of the bench, and I was pretty miserable, and basketball was not fun. Didn't really like it that much.
Did you like water polo more? Like, did you like other sports?
I did like water polo a little more because we all grew up at the beach down there in Southern California, so we were always in the water going, body surfing or whatever. And so when we got to high school, like, what do we want to do? Let's play water polo. We're in the water. That's what we do.
Could you touch the bottom and everybody else is on the tread?
Yeah. Something like that. And then, but as my high school career went on, I thought, well, the coaches were kind of like, you should really focus on basketball. And I tried to do that, but I wasn't very good at it. And so subsequently after high school, I said, okay, I'm done with all this sports stuff, now let's just figure out what we're going to do for a job. And some of my friends were going to college, taking general ed classes and stuff, and that didn't really intrigue me. And a friend of mine was going to trade school in Arizona, learning to be an auto mechanic. And I'd grown up working on boats with my father in the harbors of Southern California. He was a marine diesel mechanic, and so I decided to go to trade school for a year and learn to be an auto mechanic. I thought, well, hey, it's something I can do. You had to require a year of school. I get a certificate, and I could get a job, and then go from there. And so that's what I did. And I was back in Southern California after completing those classes out there, and was working in a tire and auto center. Just like a Goodyear store, one of those kind of places. And a junior college coach cruised in one day and saw me there. He was a basketball coach, and he said, what are you doing? Like, because now I'm 7'4", because I grew till I was about 20, and he's like, why don't you play basketball? I'm like, well, I suck at basketball, don't like it, don't want anything to do with you coaches or any of that kind of stuff. It was not a fun experience. But he had worked with a couple of big guys, and it's a much longer story, but he had worked with some guys who went on to play collegiate and professional basketball, and he knew some things about how to play basketball as a big man that I didn't know. And after a lot of cajoling, he convinced me to go out on the basketball court for a half an hour and show me some of these things. And it was intriguing because he knew basketball from the perspective of a big guy, of a post player.
And was your high school coach, was he just playing from a guard maybe? Like, was he?
Well, you got to think most high school coaches are like, hey, you're the English teacher. Like, hey, Sam, you want to be the basketball coach? Here's an extra $1,500 for the year. Now you're the coach.
Yeah.
And so they don't necessarily have a basketball background. They might have played it in high school or something, but it's not like you had some guy who had been a collegiate player or something like that who understood the game of basketball from all aspects. And so, I don't blame the coach as much as it was just like, I was tall, I didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do with me. And this particular coach in junior college had some background. He had an uncle who was 6'9", back in the 30s and 40s, who played basketball and had developed these moves for big guys that were something that you could do without a lot of dribbling from the low post down near the basket. And he showed those to me, and I was like, oh, this is kind of intriguing. Like, I'd never seen this before. And so at that point in time, I decided, all right, I'll start doing this in the evenings a little bit and just kind of see where it goes. And so then ended up into, eventually quitting my job as a mechanic, going back to junior college, and playing 2 years at junior college and going on to UCLA from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I played ball this morning, and I'm 5'10", but I play like I'm 5'4". So my post moves are, it's like.
So you need to read the book so you learn how to play big.
I need to play, I'm like.
You gotta learn how to play bigger.
I know, I need to learn, I know my job. It's hit in the corner, hit the three, and they know, hey, dish it, just to say it. Braden knows. No, but I mean, for us, it's like, I think that's interesting in and of itself, the principle of kind of your first principle in your book is know your job. And I think if you didn't really know your job in high school, it sounded like, it's like, obviously I'm tall, but that doesn't mean I know how to do my job really, really, really well.
Yeah, I was not able to I didn't know that I had skills to begin with. And this Coach Tom, showed me that, like, look, here's some things you can succeed at on the basketball court. Now, I was still really rough. I was out of shape. I hadn't done anything athletic for a long time. But he showed me just enough to pique my interest to say to myself, maybe there's another chance to look at this basketball thing. Maybe it's not a door that's completely closed. And so I took that information and I just started working with it. And it was hard. It wasn't easy at all because I had to get into condition. I had to learn how to, I'd been twisting wrenches and standing on concrete floors. And, bent over the hood of a car. I was not in any way, shape, or form an athlete at all. But we kind of worked through that over a period of months. And he showed me, how I could kind of succeed in basketball, at least at a junior college level. And then as time went on and I went to the upper levels, like going to college and things like that, other people came alongside of me and showed me even more specifically what I could do to help my team win and help myself as a player at the same time. And so my whole career was always about that, about, focusing on the one thing I could do to help the team, which would help my own career, because the team wins, I win, right?
Yeah.
And so they were very specific about, I always listen to those coaches to say, okay, what do I need to do next? What's the next thing I need to work on? From that standpoint of, I'm going to be really good at this one thing, which in my case was playing defense and helping my team win.
Yeah, you won some awards for most blocks, and you're up there with the Mutombos and the, which is cool. I mean, that, like, and a lot of people, they highlight the Michael Jordans and the, scorers, because it's like, okay, that guy's a scorer, but it's like, sometimes it's overlooked. Like, you have 3,000 block shots there, and you have, your defensive role probably made the Jazz what they were. I mean, they were a dominant force back then.
Well, when I came to the Jazz, our coach Frank Layden we were a pretty bad team then, in a bad market. The team was losing money, not winning very many games. And a lot of guys back then, when you were playing on a bad team, it was like you show up, you know, you go out and play, you put up your 15 shots, like, that was a good effort. You win, you lose, nobody really cared, and you go home. And our coach.
Isn't that weird that you still like NBA? We're talking like NBA level, and that's the way of thinking. Like,
well, you know, if you play on a team that loses 50 games, losing becomes a culture, like it or not. It does, and it takes a lot of work to overcome that. And so Frank Layden would just look for little tiny victories. He'd say, hey, I'd rather lose the game by 2 points instead of 3, because 2 points is closer to winning. And he'd say things like, nobody cares if you're scoring a lot of points on a losing team. Everyone wants the players from a winning team. And he said, if you continue to work and help your teammates and be there for each other, the individual accolades will follow. Because when the team wins, everybody starts paying attention to the individuals. And so you look in corporate culture, if you have a winning sales division, even the administrative assistants are viewed as more valuable because they've been part of a winning culture.
Yeah, your technicians, your admins,
right. They've learned how to win, and so when they go and look for another job, or an executive recruiter comes in or something like that, they're like, wow, you know, let's look at this division. Everybody on this team knows what it takes to win. Because growing up, most people don't learn that. You know, if you have the opportunity to play on a winning sports team growing up, you know, you might understand a certain point of it. But in business, everybody uses the terminology, we're a team, without really understanding what it is from the inside out. And so my unique perspective on the platform is one coming from the NBA, where, you know, you've got to win this week, because if you lose 3 or 4 games in a row, you could be living in a new city next week. So they'll trade you. And so you couldn't wait for the next, you know, sales conference or board meeting or whatever it was. It's like you had to get winning figured out today. And that meant kicking the coaches out, closing the locker room, and working it out between yourselves to get back to your winning ways. That's what was required. And so that's, that's it. And so I lived that, and I thought, well, that's just what we did. And when I got more into motivational speaking, I thought, wow, that's a unique perspective that I have that most people don't, because they haven't been in that situation. And so being able to share that with people and get them to understand what it really is to be there for the people around them is kind of fun.
Yeah, because I mean, I think a lot of people in sales, they see it as a solo game. You know, they look at it as like golf, right? It's kind of like, hey, I win by myself. But it's also like, this isn't golf. Like, there's so much to do with the success of a team that actually reflects back on you as an individual performance. Because you look back and it's like, had you have made the NBA All-Star League without the team and the winning and this momentum, no, I mean, you would have just been another big man, you know what I mean? But it's like, you guys pulled through. So I guess, when was that turning moment? Because a lot of people listening to this might be on a losing team, or they might be in the moment of like, yeah, our team sucks. I just kind of go out by myself. I sell, I come home, I feel like demotivated because there's no energy or synergy. At what point did it kind of turn for you guys to say, let's turn the Jazz program around? Because you were part of the losing team and the winning team.
I think, number one, we had a coach who preached it every day. And, and you look at coaches in professional sports, and they're always saying the same things. You can look at like Coach John Wooden, or, you know, some of the great football coaches, the things that you hear over and over and over again. And you hear a lot of it in sales training, some of these messages that you get. Well, why do those messages work? Well, because it's about consistent effort day in and day out, and staying true to your principles of who you are. You know, a lot of times in sales, you think you have to go out and reinvent the wheel. Like, I got to do it my way. Well, that's not true. There's other great people out there who've gone before you, who've figured it out. And your job is to learn from them and apply those things to your own situation. Yeah, you're not like anybody else in terms of who you are as a person, but there's tips and techniques and tried and true methods of winning a basketball game or winning in sales that always work if you're willing to apply them. And I think that's what I learned along the way. I was always working so hard to try and figure it out myself, and people would come alongside me. Like, I tell a great story in the book about Wilt Chamberlain coming alongside me one day at the gym at UCLA and saying, dude, why are you running up and down trying to chase all these little guys up and down the court? You're 7'4". Like, park your butt underneath the basket, like block shots, play defense. Like, that's something you could be really good at. And I was like,
oh, that makes sense.
Duh.
Thanks, Wilt. One of the greatest ever.
Yeah, for the greatest 5 minutes ever in my life. So I think sometimes we get in our own way of thinking like, oh, this is so hard, I got to figure this out. It's like, no, you got to step back for a minute and look at what successful people do and apply some of those principles and execute them on a daily basis. One of my good friends named Mark LeBlanc, he wrote this little book, How to Succeed in Small Business. And it's just a short little book, but he talks about what are the 3 things I'm going to do today to move my business forward that I'm going to get done no matter what. Because we have a tendency to get so bogged down with, I got to fix this, I got to do that, and sometimes you got to sit back and say, what are the most important things? How do I prioritize my tasks for the day? Or what's the shortest distance between me and a check? To get yourself motivated to do those things that are the most important. Because we learn them in sales training and other types of training we do, but then we just get sidetracked, and it takes discipline to get back to those things. But you'll find that if you're able to do that and really focus in, it'll start producing results because it just builds on itself each day. And you'll find that the other noise kind of dies down once you get real clear about what the next steps you need to take are, and then dedicate yourself to actually executing them.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think a lot of times people aren't willing to stay in this like phase of concentration and like just put their head down and like stick with that. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, I tried it for a couple days, or it was, that didn't work. And I'm like, no. These are the same principles. Everybody's saying the same things. It's just over time it will work. You have to be willing to have that patience to the journey to master.
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, we live in a culture right now of the shiny penny. Like everybody's chasing the shiny penny. I'm going to try this. I'm going to do that. I'm like, oh, look at this. Look what this guy's doing on social media. Whatever.
Yeah.
And while there's some things like that certainly can be helpful, the bottom line is that sales doesn't change. It's about connecting. It's about making relationships. It's about determining who your customer is and what they're really looking for and what their biggest pain is and how are you going to solve that from whatever you're bringing to the table, right? And so
the foundation of that will never change.
The foundation
and
never
everybody's
changes.
Trying to market this secret and this trick and this, and try never to talk to the human being, and I'll get you sales, and it's like, what do you like? No, there is like no changing from the historical moment of trade, of relationship, and discover problems, solve them.
Right. How are you going to make my life better?
Exactly.
Right. And
which if we applied this, like, what's funny is people, if they just practice those like attributes of being really, really good at that. Just like you probably practiced your post move how many times? That little like baby hook, or the little drop step, or the little, you know what I mean? It's like, how many times did you do the turn with the ball, where the ball is, where's your elbows, where's your center of gravity, where's your step? I mean, you had that thing in your sleep, I'm assuming, right?
You did.
And I think that a lot of times people aren't willing to say, dude, I've done this step thousands and thousands of times. And just like in sales, they're like, oh, I tried it, or I went out for a day, I went out for a week, and it didn't work out, or, you know what I mean? And how many times, like, no. Keep doing the same step and keep getting refined, and I promise you become the master at that step.
Yeah, and it's not easy. I know, a couple of years ago, and I wish I could remember the name of this company. They're in Tennessee, and I know they're in the business of like selling children's books door to door. And you show up for their program. Southwestern,
yeah. Out of Tennessee.
And you show up at their door with nothing, right? You have to figure out where you're going to live, how are you going to support yourself, and the only way you're going to do it is by selling these books, right?
No, it's and anybody and a lot of people listening to this don't know the world of Southwestern. Trust me, I've started to investigate and learn it.
Okay.
They literally make you move and say your first sell is your place to live.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah. But at the end of the summer, a lot of them make a substantial amount of money by figuring that out. But the point is that you really have to dive in to figure it out. And I think once it becomes that important to you, like for those guys, it's like, geez, I don't have any place to live. I don't have anything to eat. This is what I have to start with. I got to go sell myself. That's training by fire to a certain extent, but it gets you over those objections of like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I can't do this, or all the things that come up for you. And I had all those things as a basketball player.
That's what I was going to say. Like, you went through that. You went through
I did.
Screw basketball. I'm done with this.
I'm done with basketball. Here I am. I'm 21 years old. I've been eating junk food for 3 years. I haven't picked up a basketball or done anything athletic whatsoever. Just been working on cars. And it was hard the first few weeks. I was like, oh, this is not going very well, and I don't feel very good about this. And I can barely get out of bed in the morning because I'm so sore and tired. But my coach was like, come on, let's just do it one more time.
And that goes to say, like, what about a good coach? You know what I mean? I think a lot of people, there's two aspects, right? So and that's what I wanted to talk about was, one, for the individual that's sucking, and they're like, I just can't figure this out. Like, I'm sure you're beating your head against the wall quite a few times, right?
Right.
What do you, at what point do you give up, and at what point do you just say, I'm going to double down and keep trying? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, I always believed that when I started playing basketball again, I said, all right, I'm just going to play this through. I don't know where it's going to go. I had no idea if I'd be an NBA player, if I'd get done with college and that was it, and I'd go get my toolbox back out. I had no idea. But there was something inside of me where I said, all right, I'm just going to keep doing this until all the doors are shut. And as long as there was a crack in one, or I could see some little opportunity. I mean, when I left college at UCLA, the coaches really weren't there to help me in terms of like trying to get an NBA job. I mean, I sat on the bench for 2 years at UCLA. I never played. And my junior college coach, Tom, we just got out the NBA statistics and we started cold calling NBA teams. I mean, can you imagine doing that today? I just want to play
in the college.
I didn't play in college, but I want to try out for your NBA team. Yeah. And
okay.
And so what we did is we targeted the worst teams in the NBA. Like who's going to give an unproven player a chance? The guys who already suck and are looking for anybody to help them. And the Utah Jazz were in that situation. They had just come off a season where they were 25-57. So they'd lost 57 games the year before I got there. And the team was on the verge of bankruptcy. It was, the staff was told not to cash their paychecks until the players cashed theirs. I mean, that's how bad it was back then.
Oh, wow.
And so we called them because we thought, well, maybe they give me a chance. And Frank was the general manager. Because he had a team that was not very good, he was looking for help. And he's like, okay, wait a minute, this guy's 7'4". He's like, well, I never heard of him, but send me a tape. Let me look at something. And we did. And he took a shot on me in the fourth round, which is no guarantee of a job whatsoever. But then he came out and watched me play in the summer league. And because I had kept working, I had followed the discipline, the execution that my coach Tom had told me, he saw just enough where he said, I think I'll give you a shot just for a year. And it was the minimum salary. It wasn't big bucks back then. It was like 45 grand or something like that was the starting salary. But he said, if you'll just come to training camp before any other players get here and work with our coaches and get on our training program, get on our weight training program, he goes, I'll give you a chance for a year. And so I said, okay, well, here's an opportunity. So there's a little crack in the door.
Yeah.
And I said, all right. So I moved from Los Angeles to Salt Lake. And said, let's get going. And it was a little challenging at first, and I think the coaches are kind of like scratching their head. But you talk about that moment, like when did I know?
Yeah.
So the season starts, and we're still not a very good team. And one day we're playing in Dallas, and which was an expansion team at that time, the Mavericks. And they put me in the second quarter, and I blocked like 6 shots like in 5 minutes. I was just
SWAT team
swatting everything.
That's awesome.
And I remember, taking after one of those block shots, just kind of turning and running up the floor. And I look over at the coaches, and they're all sitting on the bench, and they're all looking at each other, doing this, going,
keep doing
that. I'm
like,
okay, I can do this job. So that's when I knew that I could hang. Now, I still wasn't a great player, but I knew I could help our team.
But at least they were like impressed.
Yeah, because I came into the NBA thinking maybe I could just be a good backup center. There was guys back then that could bop around the league. You play for this team, that team, whatever. Yeah. And maybe after a couple of years, you make enough money to buy a house, right? And that was kind of my attitude. But as I continued to work, and I still worked with the coaches extra before practice and after practice, and I talked to them all the time. We'd go out to dinner after games or grab a beer or whatever. And they would tell me little tidbits. I'm like, I wasn't like, a lot of players would just play and go back to their hotel room. And I was like, no, I want to know more about this game. I want to know more about this industry.
Which is a principle in of itself. I mean,
yeah.
If you're that rep that's hungry, you're soaking it in. I was out in, where was I yesterday? Where was it? North Carolina on Saturday. And there's a brand new guy, but it was so crazy. It was like he was literally touching my shoulder the whole time, shadowing me. And he's just like, I'm going to pay attention to every little move you make. And he's like, hey, can we go to dinner after? And just like what you just said.
Exactly.
And I was like, yeah, let's go to dinner, I guess. I was planning on going back to the hotel. And then, but he was the one that suggested it. Like this brand new first year guy that's never sold anything. And then all the other guys were like, oh, yeah, can we come? Like, going to dinner? And I was like, yeah, I guess so. And they sat there and asked questions the whole time. And I'm like, you guys are going to make it. Like,
yeah. There's a story in the book about a guy, a friend of mine, and actually in North Carolina. That's why I remembered it, or reminded me of it. Who's in the insurance business, and he had a new guy that took over a territory that was fresh and green. He had a family. He didn't really know what he was doing, and the guy from the next territory over took him under his wing and said, "Look, I'll share some commissions with you the first year just to help get you going." And he said that willingness to help that other guy, and this guy, same thing, just soaked it up. And those two guys ended up being two of the top salespeople in their company over the next few years because of that willingness to help each other and share some information and take each other underneath their wing. And I think that's just that willingness to listen and learn and to be willing to share if you're a coach or you've been successful at it is really what makes it work, because you can't, you're not out there by yourself. You've got a product behind you that's been developed specifically for whatever application it is. So you've got those people behind you. You've got other people out in the field that are selling as well. You guys really are a team, even though, yes, it's still dependent on their individual effort to go out there and close the deals.
It's huge.
But there are people behind you. You do have support. You're not out there hanging on yourself, and you need to pay attention to who's been successful. And it's like that old adage: you're the sum of the 5 people you hang out with, right? A lot of speakers talk about that.
Yeah.
And so, who are the successful people? Who are you learning from? And so, kudos to that guy who was willing to hang with you and say, "Hey, let's go to dinner." Because that's the same thing I tell the coaches. There was one time a couple years into my career, the team was starting to build and get better and better and better. We were on a little bit of a rise, and then we hit a little dead spot. Where we lost like 2 or 3 games in a row at home. And boy, the boo birds started showing up, and they were holding up signs about trading me and firing the coach, et cetera, et cetera. And it was kind of frustrating because up to that point, I had a pretty good relationship with the fans. And I went to dinner that night with one of the assistant coaches. I called him, and after the game, I said, "Hey, can we grab a bite tonight?" And so we went out, and I said, how do you handle this when like the people are booing you, and it seems like everything's going against you? And he told me something very important. He said, "Mark, what you do helps our team win." He said, "It doesn't always show up in the stat sheets. If you don't truly understand the game of basketball, you might not understand it.
Yeah.
But he said, you help us win." So he said, turn off the radio, don't subscribe to the paper, don't listen to any of the noise that's out there from the fans, the media, or anything like that, anything else. Focus on what you do well, and you help us win. And he said, I'm here for you. We can talk. But he gave me confidence that it wasn't about all the noise out there, all those people I was trying to appease. It was simply my boss.
Yeah,
that knew what I did, could see my value, acknowledged me for that. And I knew right then, it's like, I just need to hang with my coach.
And that's so applicable to our industry, because you might go all week, not make any sales. Your mom, your wife, your friends are like, quit. Like, what do you, you made $0 this whole week or month or whatever. And, all the noise that happens in this industry with all the fluctuation of losing a couple games in a row versus winning. And, you just saying, I have a good coach that says he instilled the confidence for you to keep going. You know what I mean? And it doesn't do you any good to keep listening to all that, because it's just going to make things a lot worse. But I think that it's so important for reps out there listening to this to know, having that mentor and coach and being the coach. If you're a manager listening to this, or you're a leader or an owner, being that guy that's willing to say, guys, cut the radio off, you got this. Like
Right.
you make us win. You are a key essential part of what we are going to need to hit our goals.
Yeah, because I think sometimes in management we get so focused on push, drive,
because most leaders are like, you suck, like pick it up, pull up your panties. I mean, I was that way for a while.
Right.
It's kind of like, dude, like pull your weight, come on. And it's
Right.
like that a lot of times turns into the leadership style, which wasn't the case from this guy that obviously.
No, and I think largely in the NBA, the better coaches have that kind of attitude of they know which guys they need to sit down with from time to time. They've got their finger on the pulse of the team and the culture of the team and like what's really going on. And so you look back at the great coaches like Phil Jackson, who coached Michael Jordan, coached Kobe, they knew how to take those guys aside and say, look, I don't need you to score 40 points every night. I need you to score 25 and I need you to get 10 assists. Because your ability to help the people around you is going to make all of us win, and you're going to win in the end. And a lot of times coaches, I think, or managers just get into that, looking at the numbers without looking at the people. And saying, because sometimes, like you say, something could be going on, you could have a fight with your girlfriend or whatever else it could be you're stuck with that week. And they've got to have the willingness to just check in and say, hey, how's it going? Like, is there anything else I can help you with? And some weeks are better than others. It's just how it is. And I've always looked at that contrast of well, okay, this week I learned what not to do, right? I tried this and this and that. And I did that. So that's that's what I shouldn't do. So what should I be doing?
Yeah.
How can I change my conversation? How can I, how can I do a better job of connecting with the people I'm meeting? So I always look at those failures as just like bouncing off the side of a wall, trying to get you back down, going down center, down the middle of the road, and that you're learning all the time. Even when you suck, you're learning.
Yeah.
You're learning what's not working, and so that's going to continue to push you to what will work if you're willing to hang in there and stay after it.
I love that. Well, we're kind of running out of time. So I want to, there's a couple like rapid fire questions that I just have itching, and I appreciate you obviously sharing all this. Like I'm like literally weaving all these little lessons because I literally look at door-to-door sales as a sport. Like we were jamming about this literally this morning, and we were just like, it is as much of a winning team, like it is an athletic post high school like highlight reel. It's like, what's our sales highlight reel? You know what I mean? And the teams and the competitions and the the gamification of sales is much like a sport. So it's fun to kind of weave these parallels, and that's why I was so excited to get a ex-NBA player to Door Con, was just to be like, hey, like how do we literally have coaches, we have captains, we have trainers, we have practice or universities, like I'm an online university, we call it, sometimes we call it the gymnasium. It's like, get back to the gym. And, it's very much so treated like this. And so we actually try to recruit return athletes or competitive athletes or ex-players because we know that they care about winning. And we're like, people with winning mindsets like sales because they see winning in the game.
And they're not as likely to get as down when you're not winning.
Exactly. They're used to the game. But a couple of just random questions that I have. I mean, you played with some of these great players like Elijah Thomas and Michael Jordan and Olajuwon and I mean Wilt Chamberlain. You know what I mean? Like some of these like icons that we looked up to as kids with the basketball cards, and you got to sit there in the locker rooms or pick punch them, give them an elbow to the side. Like, do you have any fun stories about these like all-star names like Michael Jordan or? I mean,
Michael Jordan's probably the single greatest player I ever saw in person, and you found yourself watching him during the game. If you consider the level that you have to be at to be an NBA player to begin with, because there's only 400 NBA players, right? I mean, it's a pretty small elite
how many
group
people
of
play basketball and then how many people play in the NBA?
Yeah, I think every year there's 10,000 college seniors that play basketball, and of that 10,000, there's maybe 40 new jobs in the NBA, right? So you've already got a pretty high level of athletic ability and skill. And then there was Michael Jordan, who every night, it was the other team's biggest game of the year, right? And the coach would say, I'm putting 2 or 3 guys on him tonight. Like, I don't care if John Paxson beats us or somebody else. Like, we're not letting Michael Jordan beat us. And he would just say, bring it on, baby, let's go. and put
He'd know that
drop 50 on you and say, thanks, see you next time. And so that was one thing. One of my favorite stories is we're playing the Celtics one day, and Larry Bird, who to me is one of the ultimate competitors.
He's like the white gritty dude. Like he
wasn't that, you wouldn't look at him and say, oh, that's a great athlete.
Yeah.
But he worked his butt off. And the most intimidating sight of basketball is to walk into the Boston Garden at 4:30 in the afternoon and see one guy out there shooting baskets, Larry Bird.
Really?
Out there throwing up three after three after three after three. So we're playing him one day, and I'm guarding Robert Parrish kind of on the top of the key, and Larry Bird comes off on a screen, and Parrish sets a screen on the guy, my teammate, who's defending him, and that player goes, "Get him, Mark." So I step up as Larry Bird comes off. I'm stepping up, putting my arm out, and Larry Bird in full stride says, "Yeah, Mark, get this," and throws it up, and it goes straight through the net. It doesn't even make the net move. And I'm like, wow, how good is this guy?
As he's talking.
Yeah, talking smack and dropping perfect jumpers on you at the same time. He was just so freaking good.
Was it satisfying? Did you ever block a Larry Bird or a Michael Jordan?
Oh, yeah.
Was that a satisfying feeling? You're just like, smack.
Yeah, it was a satisfying feeling.
But it's great, you scored 40 points, that's fine. But at least I got a swat.
Yeah, that's right, I stopped one of them.
I got one of them. That's got to feel way cool. But
it was a great time, a great era to play in with, with Magic and Michael and,
what about
Dr.
playing with
Jordan,
my childhood hero was John Stockton. He was my go-to.
So here's another guy we talk about discipline. So John Stockton was not the fastest guy out there. He wasn't the tallest, but he was willing to do the dirty work. He was so mean on defense too. He'd just be pulling your shirts, and he was, but he just stuck to you. Yeah, but he would never talk. I watched this interview with Gary Payton the other day, the glove, who talked about how he hated playing against John Stockton because Gary had grown up in Oakland in the Bay Area and was a big smack talker from playing street ball growing up. And he said, I could never get under his skin. I talked smack to him all game, and he would just execute. He would just execute. And John got the reputation of being a dirty player because he would do things other players weren't willing to do. So at low post, one of his jobs was to go down to the block on the basket, go across, and set a pick on Karl Malone's man. Now, Karl Malone's 6'8", 260, right? Stocked at 6'2". So here's John at 6 foot tall, 170 pounds, and he's got to go, as Coach Sloan would say, lay some meat on the opposing player across so that he can free up his teammate to come get the ball. And so John, I could still see him now, he would set his feet out behind him, and he'd put both arms up like this, put his head down, and just lean into the side of some 6'8", 250-pound guy. And those players would hate that. They'd swat at him and everything like that. But very few players were willing to make that kind of commitment. His job was to run the offense, right? He was the point guard. And he was our, kind of our team leader out there. But he was always willing to do that little stuff to make a difference. And here's this guy from Spokane, Washington, that ends up retiring as the all-time leader in assists and steals in the history of the NBA.
Yeah.
Played 19 years in the NBA just because he was willing to do the little stuff that made us a better team and helped our team win. And he didn't care whatever the coach asked him to do. Say, yeah, I'll go in there and go down in the paint with the big dudes and lay some meat on somebody because that's what my coach asked me to do. And so he was probably my favorite player I ever played with because I played with him for 9 years. But
he probably had a lot of assists in the post too. Little driving dishes, and
yep.
I'm assuming, you always had the Stockton to Malone, but at the same time, it's I'm sure he hit other people if he's a leading assist player.
But I would talk with him all the time. We go to dinner a lot. We hung out on the road a lot together, and I wasn't a good scorer. My job was to play defense. We always had a Karl Malone or something like that scored 35 points a night. The team didn't need me to score that much, but they did need me to play defense. But I still like to shoot and score the basketball. And so I'd talk to John before games. I'd say, hey, look, when they're playing that zone defense, let me just slide behind next to the basket. I said, I'm just going to make eye contact with you, and then you dime me with a pass, and I'd go up and get a quick dunk. And so it was just because I took a little extra time to do that. It was just one of those simple little things that showed up within the game that we were playing, an opportunity that I saw, and I said, if I got John just to pay attention to where I am offensively, because the defense didn't worry about me.
Yeah, they're like,
they're worried about Karl Malone. So
yeah.
a lot of times they'd leave me, and all of a sudden I'd find myself open under the basket, and I just look at him, and here comes the ball. So that was kind of the fun part of playing basketball, when you got to that point of synergy, and you knew exactly what the other guys were doing out on the floor all the time. You could feel them around you, even though you couldn't see them. And that was like being in the zone. That was the good stuff.
That's cool. Do you miss it ever? Or?
I miss that part of it.
I was gonna say that.
I miss being in the game in the fourth quarter and getting the big rebound or making the last shot. When everything's on the line, I loved being out there on the floor. I wanted to be one of those guys. Like I wanted to play every minute of every game.
Yeah,
like, don't ever take me out.
Don't take me
I would
out,
get
coach.
mad when the coach would take me out. So, it's not a good matchup right now. We got a shorter guy out there. So, and I'd sit on the end of the bench and I'd be mad because I said, I want to be out there every minute, every game. And the guys I played with, John and Karl, same thing. They wanted to be out there. They would get mad when the coach would take them out of the game. It's like, come on, put me back in.
Do you still ball?
No,
there's not like some old man league, like senior.
There is, but my body can't do that.
No.
I mean, I left it all out there on the court. So
Just
I
said,
got my 12 years, and it was.
Because doesn't like Karl and those guys still play every once in a while?
No, John still played. I think up until the last couple of years, he was playing on Sundays in the league up in Spokane. But the last time I was up there and I hung out with him, he said, "Well, I play on Sundays, but it takes me all week to recover to play the next Sunday."
It probably takes a big toll on your body playing that
it
many
does,
years.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
Anyway, that's cool. Well, I thank you for being on this and doing this. And honestly, it's just been an honor to kind of get to know you on a deeper level. And
Well, thanks, Sam. Really appreciate it.
Super excited to have you out in January.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see you in January. It's going to be a blast. Don't miss it.
Yeah.
And,
go get your ticket.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take you to the next level. Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Sam.
Knocking, knocking, knocking.